Hi, Mayowa. Can you hear me? All right. Okay, we're good to go. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. How are you, Mayowa?
I'm fine, thank you. It's been a while. How are you doing?
I know, right? It has. I'm doing good. Good to see you as well. You're doing good.
Yeah, good to see you too.
All right. So, it's a minute past 4, so I think it's time to just dive straight into the conversation. All right. So, I'll just take this moment to welcome everyone to AR Talk series. This is the first one. So, I wish I had like shake or something so that I will celebrate your right.
Uh,
So for those who are just joining us, my name is Okachichuku. So I want to thank you so much for being a part of this discussion. And I'm very pleased to have with me award-winning fact-check journalist. I like how that sounds. At
Seriously.
Press, Oluwamayowa Tijani. Mayowa, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Thank you for having me. And you look like you
I
look
didn't always
confident.
look like it, but I'm so happy that there's been a lockdown. The lockdown has been kind of reduced in a sense, and it wasn't funny, but thank God.
Thank God that yeah. No.
So how did you deal with it? I think that would be a good place to start, knowing that as a journalist you were on essential services, so you had to keep going to do your report and all of that. How was that? Especially, were you in Lagos or Ibadan?
I was in between both worlds. So at some point I was in Lagos, at some point I went for some reports in Ibadan. But personally, I would say for now, I think I found more peace in Ibadan. So now I'm actually currently in Ibadan.
Okay.
Um, yes, so it's been between both worlds, depending on how the assignments come here and there. But yeah, for me, I think uh, I would say I must confess that driving on a free Lagos road was actually like one of the perks of being a journalist at this
Oh
point
yeah.
in time. Yeah, so I
I can
think I
imagine
particularly
that.
enjoyed that.
I can
Yeah,
imagine that. None of the crazy Lagos traffic to hold you down, right?
exactly.
Awesome. So, just to kind of create a bit of a background for those who are joining us, what we're going to be looking at today is the ABCs of fact-checking news in the age of misinformation. So, we are living in a time where it has never been easier to spread fake news. But before we get into all of that serious stuff, I just want to get a sense of, your background. How did you get involved in fact-check journalism? Where did the interest come from?
Ah, I thought I was going to write this story, but now you're asking me. Okay, in 2016, I was attending the World Bank meetings in Washington. And so we had just flown to Washington we left Nigeria on Sunday night, a group of journalists from Nigeria. When we got to Washington, it was early on Monday, and of course the meeting started on Monday, so there were some sessions. So by the time we got to Washington, it was around maybe like 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And then, the airport is kind of distant from the main city and all that. Long and short, when we got there, senior journalists, people who have been in the industry for like 20 years, 30 years, when they get to a new place, they are not thinking about, they are not as hungry as I am. So they were thinking about buying SIM cards, getting connection, calling family, and all of that. Me, I just wanted to get the work done. So, but because I knew nowhere, I was new and all that, so I followed them to I think it was T-Mobile shop. They checked for phones, they checked for SIM cards and all that stuff. And so we were there till like 6 p.m. Now, at 6 p.m., we went to our hotels. Okay, maybe that part I should put out. Which I went to the hotels. When we got to the hotel, maybe it was around 9 or thereabout. And you know, having flown from Nigeria straight to a SIM card shop and now to your hotel, everybody's tired, everybody just wanted to sleep. But of course, the guy who is hungry, who has never done this before, does not want to sleep. He wants to do something because this is the first day of the meeting. Something must have happened. So I went to the World Bank website. I checked out all the programs they had for that day. And I found out that Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the immediate past finance minister at the time, had just gave a speech where she said that the President Goodluck Jonathan, basically, did not have the political will to save money for rainy days. Now, when she said that, of course, for me, I'm like, you were like, that was the finance minister of that particular administration. So, of course, news hound that's the news. So I did the story. I sent it. I did the story late into the night. I requested the video from the World Bank. I got the video. I did my transcription. I sent the story to Nigeria. Now, this was around maybe like 12:01 or thereabouts. So it was about the time Nigeria was waking up. So I sent the story and I went to bed. Now, when I went to bed, my editor edited the story, did all the work, and then published the story. So by the time Nigeria woke up, that was the story. The story was, how can she say that? How can she? And it was all over the place. Now, I went to sleep very late. So I woke up really late. So I was late for Tuesday meeting at the World Bank. Unfortunately, when I got there, all the Nigerian journalists, about maybe 10 of them, they were in a cluster and then they were talking about me. Apparently, because the story had gone out, the Punch editor had called the person who was representing Punch. This day had called this day. Channels has called this one. So everybody had called their reporter who was in Washington. That Cable has this story. Why don't you have the story? What were you doing? And all that. And in a sense, they didn't have the story because they went to sleep. And I didn't go to sleep. So when I got there, all of them were angry at me, saying that, how did I do a story without informing them? And I'm like, I thought we came here to work as individuals. Not like, it's not community reporting and all that. And so they were basically against me. But there was one man from Business Day who supported me, who was like, people should leave the guy. Was he the one that told you to go and sleep and all that stuff? Now, while that was going on, the minister released a statement to say that she did not say what I said she said. So now, think about it. All the journalists are against you. And then the minister now released a statement to say that what you reported is false. So the journalist picked what the minister said and then just like painted me bad, like this mischief maker, and you know all of that. Now, a lot of people started abusing Cable and all that stuff. But you know, fortunately for me, I'd gotten the video. And you can't argue with evidence. You can't argue with the facts and all that. So I just sent the video back to the office and told them, okay, so they called me and said, what's happening? Everybody's saying this and this and that. And I was like, okay, I'll send the video. And then I sent the video and then we published the video. Now, when the video now came out and people listened and saw it for themselves, then people started saying, the guy was right. The guy was right, you know, and all that. And then a lot of, you know how Nigerian social media work, a lot of backlash was going to her and all that stuff. So, in that moment, I started thinking about how do we make sure that journalists can be protected such that one politician doesn't just say they didn't say this, or they didn't say that, or they didn't say this. How do we stop these politicians from continually lying against the good works of journalists and all that? So basically, it started out as trying to get the facts, the truth, to protect journalists. But of course, over the years, a lot has happened, and then and then of course I met the minister. We had that conversation, and we were able to like agree on a few things, and then it was clear that I did what was right. And so it was from that moment I was like, if you don't have anybody in your corner, make sure that you have the facts in your corner. Even if your boss is not in your corner, make sure that the facts are there in your corner. So anytime I'm thinking of any story, any reporting, I'm thinking about the facts. And basically that was how everything started.
Very interesting story there. Just to talk about the term fake news, this is obviously something that a term that has been in existence. It's something that has been used and said continually over the years. But U.S. President Donald Trump, I think, popularized it and it became a thing. And so now people are using the term fake news in different ways, and to mean different things. So as a fact-check journalist, what exactly is fake news?
Okay, so as a fact-check journalist, we do everything possible to avoid the use of fake news. Now, we used to use it before, maybe a year ago or two, but now we don't. Because fake news basically does not exist, in quotes. It's politics. So it's been bastardized. So a journalist reports something that is against you, and then you say it's fake news because of your political leanings. A politician says something that is true, and then a journalist says that it's fake news. It could go both ways, but the point is that a lot of what is fake, what is not fake, is dependent on who is judging the matter. So fake news, as it were, I would say that we don't have a definition for it. It's a fluid concept. It depends on who. So, for example, if somebody says that Nigeria is a failed state, a politician can come out and say that's fake news. Now, if you look at the indices for judging a failed state, you can say based on XYZ, maybe Nigeria is a failed state. Now, another person can say no, you cannot use those indices. These are the indices to use. So the concept keeps changing, which is why we avoid it as much as possible. So we would rather deal with misinformation, disinformation. And in that sense, misinformation is sending out or sharing what is incorrect, but you are not doing it deliberately. So for example, you hear a minister say Nigeria has spent $60,000 on COVID-19 tests. And then when you are reporting that, you make the mistake of putting naira instead of dollars. Then some guy shares it somewhere, and then somebody says, this is not true. That is misinformation. So the information has been tampered with, but not as a result of your own deliberate action. However, disinformation on the other side is there's an information, but somebody deliberately changed it or adjusted something to make you feel like this is right, whereas it's not. So, for example, somebody saying that the president has died, and this was what killed him, this was where he was. That's a total cook-up. That's disinformation. So we basically, So we basically don't like to deal with it. We basically don't like to deal with it as fake news because the concept itself is not stable.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So I just wanted to come back a little bit to what you're saying about misinformation and disinformation. We know that in politics, propaganda is this tool that has been used to greatly influence public opinion. And also there is satire as well, which uses exaggeration, which you could call a lie. So how does fake news or misinformation or disinformation differ from both satire and propaganda?
Okay, so let me address satire first. In a place like Nigeria, sometimes when you look at the country, it feels like we are living in a script, a satirical piece. So it's difficult to even write satire in a country like this. But speaking of satire strictly, it's if you categorize it under any of these places I mentioned, I would say it's disinformation. But it would be unfair to just say satire is disinformation when somebody is just trying to pass a point by using that art form. So how I would explain that is that as long as somebody who writes or does satire gives a disclaimer, maybe somewhere on the website that is obvious, or maybe somewhere in their posts, or maybe at the beginning or at the end or something, if they give that disclaimer, then we don't consider it as misinformation or disinformation. It's just satire, basically. That's if the disclaimer is there. There are situations where we've debunked satires because there was no disclaimer. So somebody says that, I read one article on the New Yorker recently. They said it was written by Jeff Bezos, and I had finished reading it. It was an interesting piece, but while reading it, it was clear to me that somebody was trying to crack some joke in the midst of all of this. So the satirical end of it was clear. But towards the end of it also, you see satire, you see humor, you see all those things. So it's clear. You don't get to debunk something like that. You don't class it as misinformation or disinformation. But propaganda, now propaganda is a little more complicated. Now the reason for that is, let's look at it as this war against Boko Haram. Personally, with my, of course, you know this, with my study of irregular warfare, I know that propaganda happens to be one of the very strong weapons for fighting in a situation like this. So when you are having to deal with propaganda, you don't, in that situation, you don't, the military would have to use propaganda. So if you fight Boko Haram and you kill 10 insurgents, and then Boko Haram kills 2 soldiers, or Boko Haram kills, let's say, 20 soldiers. The way to handle that propaganda, if you go ahead and say Boko Haram killed 20 soldiers, then Boko Haram would feel good, in quotes. They'll feel like they have the upper hand and all that. So in that sense, the military would say something like Boko Haram killed 2 of our men, and then we killed 10 of them, and then, you know, that's propaganda. Now, is it the truth? No. Should we debunk it? Sometimes there might be a reason to, but in everyday case, there won't be a reason to, because you understand that it's propaganda. The people who are reading the news know that the military is trying to use information to advance. Boko Haram may be in doubt that maybe they killed only 1 person, maybe they killed 50 people. But when military says 2, okay, they might be like, so they killed more than we killed. And, you know, basically, they seem to like have the military would seem to have a number. So that's military propaganda. In that sense, there's a goal at hand, and you might want to be careful around that. However, if it's propaganda in political space, say a governor says he's fed 200,000 school children, and the governor has only fed 2,000 school children. That's sort of propaganda, but of course in that propaganda, there's outright disinformation. So that kind of propaganda is something that, yes, we would definitely want to fact check and get to the bottom of it and get the truth out to people.
Okay, so from what you're saying, I don't know if I should play the devil's advocate here. Does it look, it does seem to me like maybe intent can be the defining factor between what we call disinformation or something that we would want to like understand. And then how do we explain intent to, you know, the regular, I mean, you're a journalist, you're trained, you understand that, okay, sometimes the military needs to do this maybe to build morale, you know, to raise the morale up and all of that. But not everyone does. So when do we draw the line? How do we make a case for intent?
Okay, so, you know, when we talk about law and order and everything else in the world, it gets to the point where we say that this is this until it comes, until it stands in the way of public order, public safety, public health, and maybe sometimes national security. So when it comes to dealing with things like that, the first thing a journalist and of course the people should think is that everything has to, not everything, but a lot of things have to be done in the interest of the people, in the interest of a greater majority. That's how democracy works. So if you are a journalist within a democratic context, it is needful to, okay, so for example, let me give, there was this particular story that was reported by a newspaper in Nigeria, I won't mention the name, where the military said they reviewed their action plan. So basically saying that the military is going to strike at Gamburu at 10 p.m. tonight. And then from Gamburu, the military will strike at Baga at 12 a.m. And then the military will strike at this. And then you put that in a report because you want to tell the truth. While you might be telling the truth, you're also jeopardizing the military action plan. And in doing that, you are jeopardizing public interest. So the point at the end of the day for me is that as journalists, since we are working for the good of society, since we are working for the public interest, we need to constantly judge what is this story going to do. There are stories that we didn't have to do. You get the information, you do this, you do that. You then call the parties involved, and then you tell them to fix up because of what you know that the information can do to public interest. How many more people can be at risk? So when we are debunking misinformation, we are asking ourselves the question, how harmful is this information? And then how harmful can our debunk be? And so when you have that in place, so for example, if somebody is saying that people should take a certain drug for COVID-19, and you know that it's going to be harmful to the people, and you know that it's going to be profitable to a certain group of people, you don't stay with the certain group of people, you stay with the public interest. So because of that, every reader, every journalist should also be looking at the interest of a greater majority of people. Basically, like our moral compass, so to say, should come in place in those two.
So, why is fake news? And I know, you've made the distinction between, you're saying they don't use.
Yeah, but don't worry, you can go ahead. I understand.
Fake news. Why is it a problem, really, especially for people who unintentionally, just share something on social media without knowing the effect that it's having? Why is this something that everyone should be concerned about?
Okay, so we say that information is power. And in that same way, misinformation is also power. So, but it's just bad power. And you know how potent bad power can be. So, if you have bad power and then you use it, it can become let me give an example. Recently, it was said initially that chloroquine has shown some promise in treating COVID-19. And then somebody put up a voice note with a picture and then says that this is how to use the chloroquine. You are going to use 500 milligrams 2 times a day for 8 days and you'll be fine. And then the person does blah, blah, blah. And then that same person, or may not be the same person, maybe the same person, goes on to build a website where chloroquine is sold. And it is that particular chloroquine that he prescribed in the voice notes. So the person who is listening to that information is listening to it and saying, oh, finally we found something that can help us survive COVID-19. But the guy who sent it is just waiting for alert for somebody to go to the bank, buy the chloroquine on his website, pay him some money, and then whether you die from it or not, it's no longer the person's business. There was a particular case like that we debunked, and we're able to, the website was even set up in the UK for people to buy chloroquine and then pay into this person's account. And so a lot of people were sharing that particular piece, that particular voice note and picture and all that. And so when I did debunk, one of the things I found was that taking that particular dose of chloroquine can actually kill you. Or if it doesn't, it can cause permanent blindness. So a number of harmful things can happen as a result of that. But you know, the person who shared it, the person who sent it to me, thought they were helping me. That in case I'm having any symptoms, I can go and buy chloroquine and do this. And then the person who sent it to another person, who sent to another person, who sent to another person, it goes like that. But the problem at the end of the day is that it is harmful. The person who shares it might mean good, but if somebody takes action on the basis of that information, the person might put in their life at risk. So, like I said at the beginning, information is power, misinformation is bad power.
Interesting. Before I come down to the methodologies you use for fact checking, I want to ask, should every story or every claim be fact checked? So how do you, as a fact check journalist, determine what claims to fact check and what claims to let slide?
Okay, so let me start with this. I was doing a debunk recently on WhatsApp. So I was checking for data basically. And one of the things I found was that 65 billion messages are sent on WhatsApp every day. Now, 65 billion. Now, with 65 billion messages, let's say 2% of that is misinformation. Just to, in fact, 1% of that is misinformation. That is 650 million messages. If all of Nigeria was to be made of fact checkers, we wouldn't be able to debunk all of that in one day. So there has to be priority. Now, so this is how we put our priority. How harmful is it? How far has it gone? How quickly is it going to affect somebody? Once we can answer those three questions, we are clear about which one to debunk. So sometimes, and of course, priority is given to how harmful is it. Because sometimes some things have gone really wild, but they are not really harmful. And because it's not really harmful, we can say, okay, this can wait till tomorrow, or this can wait till next tomorrow. But if it's something that has gone far and is dangerous, we quickly work on it, just so that we get the right information out there. So it is based on that we measure our priorities and say this must be done now, and this can be delayed till later.
Awesome. So let's talk about the methodologies that you use for fact-checking news at AFP. Can you share some of them? What are the steps? What does it take to fact-check one piece of misinformation?
Okay, so it depends on the structure. So some are images, some are voice notes, some are text, WhatsApp BCs, some are maybe a political statement by a politician on TV or something. Now, when we have all of that, let me start with the first one, the image. Image is like maybe one of the easiest. So you see an image being shared, sometimes can be difficult, but let me give an example. Recently, there was an image that was shared that Bill Gates was arrested for bioterrorism. And there was a picture of him in handcuffs, and he was being held by 2 FBI agents and basically taken away to where we don't know. Now, when you see that kind of image, the first thing we do is to run a reverse image search. Now, there are a few tools that we use for that, but I guess the most popular one around is the Google reverse image search, or just simple Google image search. When you do that, okay, that particular story, it was as easy as that. Just running that reverse image search, it brought out the original picture. It was a picture of a New York mobster, Vincent Amaro, or thereabouts. I'm not sure about the name. He was arrested by FBI in 2015 or 14, and the picture was basically him, but they just like removed his head in Photoshop or wherever and put Bill Gates' head, and it was a little well done. So you really think it's Bill Gates that was being arrested. But just running a reverse image search, you find the original picture, you find the actual story, and then you can say that this is false. So that's for image. Then for videos, videos are very technical, but the easier way that everybody can understand. When you see a video that is being shared like that, you could take a screenshot of maybe key places in the video. When you take a screenshot, you search for the screenshot like you do an image search. And once you do that, if the video is a video that has been on the internet before, you would likely see the video come up. Then if it's a voice note, voice notes are very technical in the sense that you can't take screenshots, you can't put the voice note somewhere, you can't. So what you do in that sense is that you take up the key claims in that voice note. So for example, there was a voice note we worked on that somebody was saying that 45 million Nigerians were going to die from COVID-19. Now, it's as simple as taking a major claim or a number of claims. This particular one that I'm talking about, person made like 15 claims, but I just took a few of them. The first one, 45 million. Now, what does it take for 45 million people to die? I looked at the global figures. I think Italy has the highest mortality, which is about 10%. So 10% of Nigeria's population, if we are to use worst case scenario, 10% of Nigeria's population is just 20 million. That's if everybody contracts COVID-19. So clearly, if everybody in the country contracts COVID-19, which is probably not possible, only 10 million people can die, which of course that's a lot of numbers, but like looking at the mass. Now, if you look at the average, which is 3%, the death rate for COVID-19 is about 3%. If everybody in the country contracts COVID-19, at 3%, that would just be about 6 million people. So to say 45 million people will die is outrightly wrong based on whatever data you are using. That's one. Then the person goes on to say that the NDDC reports to a particular doctor in WHO and then mentions the name of doctor. So I pick up the name, I search for the name, and I found out that the person he was speaking about worked in Nigeria up until 2018. So saying that they are reporting to someone who is retired is ridiculous. And so based on just searching for what the claims are in the voice notes, you are able to get the real information. So that deals with voice notes. Then text. Yeah, for text too. Running searches, calling contacts, for political statements. Okay, so there was one that a minister said Nigerians import pizza from, that. And I called British Airways. I spoke with them. They told me what the situation was and that they don't even take pizza on board, that they will have to put it in cargo. And that putting pizza in cargo from London to Nigeria for 6 hours or more, that they don't think is really a smart thing to do that. They've really never had a case like that. So that way, basically, we're able to check whatever claims anybody is making at any time.
So what happens if your contacts, looking at the ones where you have to probably call people, for instance, for political stories, where you need to call maybe an aide to a governor or, a spokesperson. What happens if your contacts for fact-checking refuse to respond thoroughly or respond at all? How does someone who wants to be a fact-checker proceed, especially if it's a very important story?
Okay, so when we approach every fact check, we are approaching from multiple angles. So a minister, for example, says that Nigerians are importing pizza. We are thinking about it. If you are importing pizza, how do you do it? Oh, and then he made it easier by saying they do it on via British Airways. So that's your first lead. Like, okay, British Airways is a place to go. Then secondly, you are thinking about, is it possible for me to import pizza? Can I go through the process? So you are calling maybe Domino's or whatever, Papa's, whatever pizza company you want to call in the UK to speak with them that can they deliver to Nigeria and all that. So you are following that angle. And then you now call the minister to say, can you give us more information on it? So if the minister does not answer, if the minister does not pick his call, if his aides are not responding, if whatever, you can go from the other end and still come to the same conclusion that is this possible or not. And more often than not, in my experience, when they don't answer, when they are dodging you and all that, is often this case that what they've said is not true. There was one story I was working on. It was about Femi Fani-Kayode. He had said something, and then I called him, and then, he was trying to, play around the issue. Then I sent him some messages on WhatsApp, and then he just went really started saying some very strong things. So in that sense, you must be able to approach every piece of fact checking from multiple angles. You make sure that your information does not just come from one source, so that if that source is not available, you cannot do anything.
So looking at the fact that misinformation spreads very fast using digital tools, and then also talking about the fact that there are people who do not have access to these digital tools, but who are either consuming this misinformation or even spreading them. How can people without access to digital fact-checking tools verify information for themselves?
I basically think that first, most of this, we are going into a world where fact checkers will not be enough, and a lot more people would have to be able to. Okay, for example, in Finland, they are already teaching fact checking in secondary schools. So for every of if you are done from secondary school, you should be able to fact check every form of misinformation out there. So I feel like on the long run, we would have to come to a place where we have to integrate fact checking into school curriculum and all that at secondary, primary, university level. That's one. And then number two, I feel like every person who has maybe some small level of education enough to use a mobile phone can at least download an image search app or run an image search the way they run a Google search. And if you can do that, you are able to check a lot of videos and pictures just without having any serious digital tool. And then I think that if you cannot, a lot of fact-checking organizations have contact lines. They have WhatsApp numbers, they have Twitter pages and all that, where you can reach them and ask certain questions. We have hundreds of people that send us messages on WhatsApp every day saying that, is this true? Is this correct? Can you check this? And we can just give them information that, yes, this is true, this is false, this is misleading, this one will need some time, and that way. And then lastly, I think that everybody who comes across misinformation and can understand it probably also reads and listens to the news. So if you get a piece of information and you are not sure about it, you can confirm with the news. You can confirm with what is out there in the papers and the online media, in radio stations. Like basically, you can get the facts from your credible news sources.
All right. So apart from credible news sources and maybe, checking out newspapers, because truth be told, it's not everyone who probably has access to some, contacts that you have as a fact-check journalist. So for ordinary citizens, right, what are some of the easiest tips for spotting fake news?
Now, more often than not, especially in these times, when I say that when you are reading something or you are listening to something, and the first thing that the reader or the writer or the speaker is trying to show you is who they are, you are likely reading a piece of misinformation. So, for example, if somebody is saying, I'm a doctor, I worked with the World Health Organization, and I have done this, and the person is trying to assert some authority, the person is likely about to mislead you. If you see a piece of misinformation, the person says, I worked with Lagos State government, we did all the COVID-19 tests, and then this. The person is likely about to tell you what is false. So basically, I think some of these things are instincts, or they are like mental tools that you gain over time. Now, in these times, if somebody is extremely trying to assert their authority before passing an information to you, it's likely that the person is trying to tell you a lie. Then also, if it feels too good to be true, more often than not, it is too good to be true. Then if it's not seen or reported, okay, so if it's only one source, yeah, let me put it that way. If it's only one source that is reporting it, is also very likely to be false. So basically, there are a lot of pointers to watch out for, but I guess those are some of the ones I can remember off the top of my head now. If it's
So
too good to be true,
okay,
it's
go
likely
on.
too good to be true. Yeah.
All right. So what has been like the most ridiculous viral story you have had to fact check? A story that, had you going like, surely people should know that this
Oh,
is, I mean, why
right.
is everybody believing this?
Yeah. Um. Ah. Okay. So one of the things I say, maybe I should put it this way. One of the things I say to a lot of people is that you should respect misinformation. Like, you should respect it, because there are some things you see and you're like, how the hell does anybody even believe this? And then you now check on Facebook. Okay, so we have access to like this Facebook backend kind of place where we see how far some pieces of information have gone. And when I now check there, I now find out that 500,000 people have shared it and 6 million people have seen it. And you're wondering, like, okay, so let me give an example. Um, there are many ridiculous examples, but I don't know which ones. Okay, let me start with the one before COVID. Somebody saying that MTN is giving out 200,000 iPhone 10. And all you have to do is to comment win. And then MTN will send it to you. And then you are wondering, like, can somebody just sit down and think that if MTN is giving out 200,000 iPhones, there's going to be a billboard, there's going to be a TV advert, there's going to be, you hear it all over radio and all that. So you just sit on Facebook and they just say, once you comment and share it with 5 people, then you win. And then people go ahead and do it over and over and over again. And so sometimes I'm just like, I wish I could just find all these people and, deal with them. But to more serious matters, I've seen someone say, let me see, which one should I? Okay, somebody's saying that if you cut onions open and then you put it at the corners of your house, that it would prevent coronavirus from coming in. And then you are wondering, like, okay, if this was true, do you think the whole world will not be cutting onions and putting all over? Even government will cut onions and put on the road. But you see people believe it and go ahead and cut onions and put in their houses and all that. And you're wondering how. So sometimes it's just insane what people would believe.
Does it frustrate you though when you painstakingly fact check a story and then you find out that people are still spreading falsehood?
It frustrates me a lot. In fact, when I just got on the job at AFP, the first month, I felt like quitting. I did a lot of stories, I did a lot of debunks and all that, but you would just hear people say, no, it's propaganda. So so let me give you an example. The one that somebody said 45 million Nigerians would die from COVID-19. And then I run the fact check. I show you basically that person was lying. And then I show you by the numbers that it's not even possible, because that would mean everybody will contract coronavirus first, and then a good number of people will have the worst case scenario. But even at that, we still will not get 45 million. And then I shall prove it with everything I know how to, with information from WHO, from NCDC, from everywhere. And then you say, it's possible. Don't you know that many Nigerians have underlying health issues? Don't you know that this and this and that? And they say all sorts. And I'm wondering, like, how? How does it even make sense to you that a country will stand and watch 45 million. Like, do you know what 45? Like, but people then go, our health system is bad and this and that. And I'm like, but what gives me like joy in quotes is that when I do some of those debunks, at least with our partnership with Facebook, when I do those debunks, Facebook flags those pages, reduces the traffic to those posts by 80%. If the page is known, like if the page is notorious for sharing fake news, they can bring down the page. They can reduce. Okay, so there's a particular newspaper that has been in talks with us lately. I've done like 2-3 fact checks on some of their stories, and so Facebook has reduced their traffic totally. So let's say they have a followership of 1 million people. So normally, let's say like 300,000 of those people engage with them day in, day out. So now they have less than 30,000 people engaging with them. So they are calling us and saying, can we help them? How do we rectify the situation? Their traffic is bad and this and that. And so they are taking it seriously that, okay, we cannot just publish anything. We cannot just share anything. So while people can still believe what they want to believe, the guys who are sharing those pieces of misinformation are now feeling the heat. And so that's improving the way this whole thing works. So I feel like for me, that's like my consolation. When people don't believe, there's really nothing we can do about them.
You know, talking about solution to ending, misinformation, you've mentioned what Facebook does, for example. But yet many people think that, social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter are not doing enough, to curb the spread of misinformation. So you reduce a number from, let's say, 1 million to 30,000. 30,000 is still a very significant number. So many people are saying, some people think that government needs to come in and maybe regulate these channels, to hasten, an end to the spread of fake news. Some other people are saying that, social media platforms themselves need to take more responsibility. Some others think, people should just take more personal responsibility because free speech is a thing. So when you take down my post, you're infringing on my rights to free speech. Where do you stand on this? Who should have more of the responsibility?
Personally, I feel like regulating misinformation should also work the way regulating the media works. I feel like it's self-regulation at the end of the day. Because once you, let me give an example. We read in the news that a journalist abused Governor, was it Rufai? And then the journalist was arrested and bundled somewhere. Then we read also that somebody insulted Lai Mohammed and he was arrested. And then that exactly is what is going to happen when we get to a point where there is regulation of social media. Somebody will just write something as simple as expressing themselves, and then they'll get arrested that they were abusing one governor or they were sharing so. And before you know it, we are having people behind bars for telling the truth. So it then becomes, who would say this is misinformation and this is not? So, there's a lot of gray areas around regulating misinformation in any country. So I would say that what governments can do, if government really must do anything, is put pressure on the big guys, Facebook, WhatsApp, Twitter, Instagram. In fact, put pressure on Mark Zuckerberg and his empire, and then put pressure on Jack to say, this is how we want you to deal with misinformation in Nigeria. So I'm pushing a case with WhatsApp currently where, these forwarded stories, they say if it has been forwarded by many people, you see that double forward sign. Mm-hmm. If it has been forwarded maybe once or twice, you see just one forwarded sign. Now, what I'm pushing for is that we have two timestamps. So the first will be that the day that message was created. So if I type the message on the 1st of March 2019, if somebody is sharing it on the 1st of March 2020, it should carry the timestamp of when I created it. message created on March 1, 2019, message shared on March 1, 2020. So if it carries two timestamps, what that does is that you cannot say, so I've seen pictures that are sent in 2020 saying that this is happening right now. Right now. Whereas that right now was March 1st, 2019. So if the date was there, you won't even need anything. Somebody just see the message and you see right now and say, "I know this is not right now. This happened." But there's a lot of conversation about end-to-end encryption. Do we tamper with people's privacy and all that stuff? A lot is going on there, but I feel like they can do a few. I have a lot more recommendations for them, but I feel like that particular one is very important. So this is where I feel like government should be playing. I may not be able to put enough pressure on them as an independent fact checker, but a government can say, for you to operate in Nigeria, we want 2 timestamps. For you to do this, we want this. And so based on that, we might be able to control misinformation without actually hurting freedom of speech or anything like that.
Interesting. So let me talk about apathy and distrust in the media, right? And that's something that we're witnessing not just in Nigeria, but globally, where President Trump calls the media the enemy of the people. And we're seeing where, situations where even when media organizations, reputable ones, share things, people just have this very, apathetic disposition towards the information, and they don't even believe it when it's true. So what would it take to restore trust in mainstream media, especially in a time when social media has eliminated traditional gatekeepers and, everyone can publish news, even when what they are publishing is, disinformation?
Good. So I feel like what journalists need.
Yes, I can hear you.
The distrust from people can be managed. Now, one thing about the media, which is probably one of the things I don't like, is that we always tell what the problem is. We don't tell, maybe sometimes we don't tell what the solution is. And then we don't tell, some people will argue that it's not our business to tell what the solution is. But I feel like there are good stories in the world that we don't report. So, for example, if there's a newspaper that constantly makes a point of duty to report what is good, then that newspaper would maybe be loved. So I know that when I first joined the cable, one of the things that we set out to do is not just to report the problem. Where there's a solution, always report the solution. Mm-hmm. So if there is something that one state is doing right and you feel like other states can do it, and then you report it. If there are ordinary people's stories that you report day in, day out, if there's like a structure of ownership that the people can feel like this is our newspaper, then you get a lot more trust and credibility in that sense. But of course, there would always be naysayers. There would always be people who feel like the media is just there to say and do whatever they like. So I feel like we should put ourselves in the shoes of people, think about why they doubt us, and then try to fix up on some of those things.
Is there hope though? I mean, are we ever going to get to a point where, we defeat the scourge of disinformation and misinformation?
My answer would be maybe yes and no. No, in the sense that as long as humans are alive, people have been lying since the foundation of the earth. And people are going to lie till we all leave this place. So as long as lies exist, it means that misinformation would exist. However, the way we react or deal with it can change based on education. So how I say that if fact-checking was part of curriculum and everybody knows how to do their own fact checking. When somebody lies to you, you just check, and then you know that this person is not being truthful. And so your reaction to that piece of information would be different. So I feel like that's how we can deal with it. But would it get out of the earth? No, it would always be here with us.
All right. So before we go, I'm trying to look at some of the comments where somebody, this is from at Zoompad, who is obviously responding to the story you told earlier when you were giving us a background as to how you got involved with fact-check journalism, where you talked about, attending a World Bank meeting and, former Minister of Finance, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, said something that you reported. So he said, talking about one source, remember you were the only source that sent the statement of Okonjo, but it turned out to be true what only you said. So he is saying, you talked about how to spot fake news, and he said if the source from one source. So
yes.
In this case, where the cable was the only source reporting this news, I mean, anybody would think it was fake news, right?
Yes, true. Now, in that kind of situation, how to deal with it is, there are newspapers that report exclusives, something that only them have found out, and then they report it. In that particular kind of situation, what you have to do is wait. So he said, Okonjo-Iweala said this. Okonjo-Iweala said she didn't say it. At that point in time, if you don't believe me, there's no problem. If you don't believe her, there's also no problem. But if you believe me against her, there might be a problem. Maybe she's right. If you believe her against me, there might be a problem. Maybe I'm right. So, but in the course of time, we've come to find that somebody was right and somebody was wrong. So when you are having to deal with one source, you should not take a life decision. You should not take an important decision based on information from just one source. Except, of course, you have tested the source time and time again. But even if you have, there are situations where we have some sources, highly placed security sources that give us info. There's a particular person who gives us information on some things, and there was this particular day he gave us an information that they had arrested former head of state, Ibrahim Babangida, and this person had given us solid information for like 2 years. And then when he said that, it was easy. We believe him, and then we should go ahead and run the story. But because of internal checking protocols, let's check, is this true? Can we confirm from another source? Even though that source is credible in its own record, checking with another source, we eventually found out that they've arrested Babangida Aliyu, not Ibrahim Babangida. So maybe somebody just told him that they've arrested Babangida, and then he... Even when you have a trusted one source, you probably should try and get more sources. All
right, and I think there's a question here from DJ Drex, and this is what he has to say. He says, are there steps